I stood barefoot at the water's edge on a quiet Texas beach, watching the Gulf Coast sunset set the sky ablaze in gold and crimson. Warm waves lapped over my feet as the sun sank beyond the horizon. A gentle breeze carried the salt air, and for the first time in a long while I felt truly at peace. I closed my eyes and let the moment wash over me. If someone had told me 6 months ago that I'd find serenity again, I wouldn't have believed them. Yet here I was, calm and hopeful, reflecting on the strange path that led me to this new beginning. Opening my eyes, I glanced over my shoulder. In the distance, my new love waved for me to come back up the beach, her silhouette backlit by the last rays of daylight. I smiled and waved back. How did my life change so completely, I wondered. Not long ago, I was a broken man, betrayed, hurt, and angry, standing on the brink of ruin. Now those dark days felt like a lifetime ago. With the sun dipping low, I took a deep breath of the warm evening air. It's finally over, I thought with relief. They're gone from my life and I've survived. More than survived, I've won, in every sense that mattered. As I turned to join the woman waiting for me, I allowed myself one last look at the vibrant Texas sky. It was the end of a chapter, and the start of something better. It had been a long, twisted journey to get here, I reflected, but I finally found justice, love, and peace. 6 months earlier, secrets and betrayals. Melissa! Chandra! Two women greeted each other with excited squeals and a tight embrace in the corner of a stylish uptown Dallas cafe. The lunchtime clatter of dishes and the low hum of conversation filled the air around them. Both were in their early 30s and impeccably dressed. One a petite blonde in a tailored navy dress, the other a tall brunette in a chic pantsuit. They slid into a private booth near the back as a waitress brought over 2 glasses of chilled white wine. Even though it was only April, the Texas sun had already warmed Dallas into the mid-80s, making the cafe's air conditioning a welcome relief. "I'm so glad you called, Chandra. It's been ages." The blonde purred warmly as she lifted her wine glass. Chandra, the brunette, flashed a bright smile. "I know, Melissa. Running my own event planning business has me swamped, but I couldn't pass up the chance to catch up with my old college roommate." She clinked her glass lightly against Melissa's. Melissa laughed. "And I couldn't miss seeing my maid of honor again. We have so much to catch up on." They sipped their wine, exchanging a few pleasantries about work. The conversation soon turned boastful in the playful way of old friends showing off their successes. Chandra flipped her hair proudly. "Business is booming. Just last week, I landed a huge contract to manage events for one of the biggest tech firms here in Dallas. Next year's revenue will be through the roof." "Wow, that's fantastic," Melissa said, widening her eyes appreciatively. "I always knew you'd crush it. You were organizing half the campus back in college." Chandra chuckled. "Guilty. And what about you? Last I heard, you made partner at your law firm recently." "That's incredible, Melissa." Melissa's lips curled into a self-satisfied smile. "Actually, I'm on track to make partner very soon. Foster Burns and Ward is the top firm in the city. I've had record billable hours and brought in some major clients. It's practically guaranteed at this point." "That's amazing. I thought I was doing well, but you're making me look lazy," Chandra teased. They shared a laugh and ordered light salads when the waitress returned. For a while, they chatted about mutual acquaintances and funny college memories. But soon, the topic shifted to personal lives. Chandra dabbed the corner of her mouth with her napkin and tilted her head curiously. "So, Melissa, you haven't mentioned anything about your personal life. How are things at home? How's Daniel doing?" At the mention of her husband, Melissa's smile faltered ever so slightly. She took a longer sip of wine. "Daniel's fine," she said quickly, not meeting her friend's eyes. Chandra wasn't convinced. She had known Melissa since freshman year, long enough to sense when something was off. "Uh-oh, that didn't sound very convincing," she said gently. "Everything okay between you two?" Melissa sighed and toyed with the stem of her wine glass. "Honestly, I wasn't going to bring this up, but I really need to tell someone." She looked up earnestly. "But you have to promise me that this stays between us. Strictly confidential." Concern flickered across Chandra's face. She reached out and touched Melissa's hand briefly. "Of course, you can trust me. What's going on, Mel?" Melissa glanced around to ensure no one was listening. She leaned in and lowered her voice. I'm having an affair, she confessed. Chandra's eyes widened. For a moment, she was speechless. Oh, wow, she managed softly. Melissa, I'm surprised. You and Dan always seemed like the perfect couple. Melissa's laugh came out bitter. We used to be, I guess, but things change. She sat back, swirling the wine in her glass. Daniel has become a major disappointment. Chandra frowned, clearly not expecting that response. Disappointment? What happened? Melissa took a moment as if deciding where to begin. Remember a couple years ago how Daniel left his job to join a startup as their general counsel? He really bet everything on that move. Chandra nodded slowly. I think I recall that. He was excited about a big opportunity, right? Yeah. And it blew up in his face, Melissa said bluntly. The startup's funding fell through, the whole deal collapsed. He was left jobless and humiliated. She shrugged, her tone unsympathetic. And now he's trying to run his own one-man law practice out of some tiny rented office in a strip mall. It's pathetic. He barely gets any clients, and he's bringing in almost no money. I'm basically supporting us by myself. Chandra pursed her lips. It does sound rough. But Dan supported you back when you went to law school and had no income. He worked so you could finish, right? Melissa's expression tightened at the reminder. That was different. I had a plan and I followed through. I made something of myself. Daniel, I don't see him ever bouncing back. He's just banging his head against the wall, chasing small-time cases, hoping to strike it big somehow. I've outgrown him. She sighed dramatically, then continued. Honestly, it's downright embarrassing. I can't even mention what he does to my colleagues. The other partners' spouses are accomplished doctors, executives, real professionals. And then there's my husband, sitting alone in a shabby little office, waiting for walk-in clients like some strip mall notary. Chandra raised an eyebrow at Melissa's harsh tone. Ouch. That's a bit cold, Mel. She paused, giving her friend a sympathetic look. I get that you're frustrated, but maybe things will turn around for him. He's a smart guy. Melissa shook her head, unconvinced. I used to believe that. But it's been over a year and nothing's improved. We want completely different things now. I'm racing ahead in my career and he's stuck in neutral. Maybe we were a perfect couple once, but not anymore. She took another gulp of wine. I feel like I'm dragging dead weight. A silence hung between them for a moment. Chandra reached over and squeezed Melissa's hand gently. So this affair, is it serious? Who is he? A slow smile crept back onto Melissa's face. A different, almost secretive smile. She lowered her voice further. You cannot breathe a word of this, but it's my boss, Garrett Ward. Chandra's jaw dropped slightly. Garrett Ward? As in Ward from Foster Burns and Ward? She knew the name. Everyone in the Dallas corporate law world did. Garrett Ward was a senior partner and widely considered the heir apparent to lead the entire firm in a few years. Melissa nodded, clearly pleased at her friend's reaction. That's the one. He's been mentoring me, and, well, one late night at the office led to another. It's been going on for about 5 months now. Wow, Melissa, a partner in your firm, Chandra said, equal parts impressed and uneasy. That's quite risky, isn't it? If the firm finds out? They won't, Melissa interjected quickly. We've been extremely careful. No one suspects a thing. And once I make partner, which will be announced in a couple of months, Garrett and I will gradually make our relationship public. By then, he'll be separated from his wife and I'll be free of Daniel. Chandra's brows knitted. Separated from his wife, so Garrett's married too? Yes, but he has a prenup, Melissa said matter-of-factly. So leaving her won't cost him much. They don't have kids. He's ready to divorce her as soon as I've handled my situation. Chandra sat back, absorbing all of this. She spoke carefully. Melissa, you know I love you, but you're playing a dangerous game. Texas divorces aren't exactly guilt-free. If Daniel catches you cheating, you could end up paying dearly. Alimony, a big settlement. At the very least, it won't be as easy as you think. Melissa's eyes flashed, some irritation seeping through her polished facade. Which one of us has the law degree? She said, a touch defensively. Then she forced a light smile, waving off Chandra's concerns. I know what I'm doing. I've thought it through. Chandra looked doubtful. Have you, though? You just said it yourself. If you divorce, you might owe Daniel spousal support since you're the higher earner. That could be substantial if your career is skyrocketing. A shadow crossed Melissa's face at the mention of money. She took a deep breath. Trust me, I have no intention of paying alimony or splitting everything I've worked for. I need to be smart about this. What does Garrett think? Chandra asked softly. Does he know about your financial concerns? He knows I want out of my marriage quickly. We both do. He's tired of sneaking around, Melissa admitted. Garrett's pushing me to hurry up and cut ties with Daniel. But I told him it's complicated. She frowned slightly, then her voice turned steely. One way or another, I'll figure it out. I'm not going to let Daniel hold me back or profit from my success. I'd rather burn it all down than give him half of what I've built. Chandra fell silent, disturbed by the sudden hardness in her friend's tone. She had never seen Melissa like this in college. Ambitious, yes, but not callous. I really hope you know what you're doing, she said quietly. Be careful, okay? I don't want to see you get hurt. Or hurt anyone needlessly. Melissa softened slightly and reached out to touch Chandra's arm. I know you're looking out for me. I'll be careful, I promise. But staying in my marriage out of pity isn't an option. I deserve happiness, and Garrett makes me happy. We have big plans together. Chandra managed a small smile. Just keep your eyes open. Don't underestimate Daniel either. Sometimes people surprise you. A brief flash of uncertainty crossed Melissa's face but disappeared just as quickly. She raised her nearly empty wine glass. To new happiness, she said. Reluctantly, Chandra clinked her own glass against it. To happiness, she echoed, though her eyes were full of worry. As the two friends finished their secret-filled lunch, life went on around them in the cafe. Melissa had made up her mind. Her old life with her husband was over, even if he didn't know it yet. 3 weeks later, cracks in the facade. Unfortunately, I didn't learn about my wife's lunchtime confessions to Chandra until much later, long after the damage had been done. At the time, I had no idea that my wife, Melissa, was already plotting a life without me. All I knew was that late last spring, my world felt like it was slowly unraveling, and I couldn't figure out why. It was a warm May morning in Dallas when I pulled my car into the parking lot of a small shopping plaza in North Dallas. I eased my aging Honda Accord into the spot labeled Law Office of Daniel King Reserved, right in front of my own modest practice. As I stepped out, locking the car behind me, my eyes caught the glare of a for lease sign 2 doors down. Another business had given up on this struggling strip mall. I tried not to take it as an omen. Inside my cramped office, I flicked on the lights and forced a determined breath. This little 2-room suite wasn't much, just a reception area and a windowless back office where I handled paperwork. But it was what I could afford after the fiasco with my last job. I shrugged off my suit jacket and hung it on the lone coat rack. The silence in the office was deafening. No ringing phones, no chattering staff, not even a client waiting. Just me and my thoughts. I spent a few minutes sorting through the mail, junk, a late bill, and an advertisement for litigation software I couldn't afford. With a sigh, I dropped into my squeaky desk chair. This was not how I had envisioned my career turning out. A couple of years ago, I had been poised for something big, a general counsel position at a rising tech startup. I'd left my old associate job at a mid-sized firm for that opportunity, convinced it was my ticket to the top. Melissa had been so excited for me then, but when the startup's funding vanished and they rescinded the job offer, I was left high and dry. My pride had kept me from crawling back to my old firm. Instead, I decided to hang out my shingle and start my own law practice, believing I could make it on my own. I was wrong. Building a legal practice from scratch was harder than I ever imagined. Month after month, I struggled to attract decent clients. I took on whatever came through the door: minor car accident claims, petty contract disputes, the occasional uncontested divorce, just enough to scrape by. It was humbling, exhausting work, and the financial stress was taking a toll. That stress had seeped into my marriage as well. Melissa had been patient at first, encouraging even. But as her own career flourished, I could sense her growing disappointment in me. These days, she often worked late at her downtown firm and barely asked about my day. When she did, I felt ashamed to admit I'd spent hours reorganizing files or sending out mailers to drum up business. We were living seemingly separate lives, hers full of glamorous client dinners and partnership track pressures, mine full of lonely hours and a gnawing sense of failure. I rubbed my temples, trying to ward off the headache that threatened every time I thought about our mounting bills. Melissa's salary paid most of them now, and I hated that. I wanted to be the provider I once was, the confident husband who could pull his own weight. Instead, I felt like I was drowning, and my wife was drifting further and further out of reach. The last time we'd been intimate, I paused, struggling to remember. It had been months. Melissa was always tired or busy, and honestly, my own self-esteem was so low I hadn't tried very hard to initiate anything. Each night she spent working late or closeted with her phone, I worried more. Was it just work? Or had she truly lost all interest in me? I glanced at the framed photo on my desk, our wedding day, 7 years ago. We looked so happy, so hopeful. Melissa's radiant smile and my proud grin as we held each other for the photographer. That bright young couple felt like strangers now. I swallowed the lump in my throat and pushed those thoughts away. I had work, however little, to focus on. I powered up my computer to review the few active cases I had. As the screen flickered on, I caught a reflection of myself and cringed. Dark circles under my eyes, a permanent frown line etched on my forehead. I hadn't been sleeping well. Before I could open the first client file, a sudden thump followed by the jangle of the front door chime startled me. I heard a muffled curse from the reception area. Leaping up, I hurried out to see what was going on. The sight that greeted me was unexpected. A large cardboard box had toppled over just inside the door, spilling a cascade of folders and books across the floor. Standing over the mess, looking equal parts apologetic and flustered, was a young woman I didn't recognize. She appeared to be in her mid-20s, dressed in smart business casual, a crisp white blouse, and charcoal slacks, with her curly dark hair pulled back into a low ponytail. Her skin was the color of roasted coffee and her brown eyes were wide with embarrassment as she knelt to gather the scattered papers. I stepped forward to help, picking up a thick law textbook that had slid near my feet. "Whoa, are you all right?" I asked. "I'm fine, I'm so sorry," she blurted out, looking up at me. "I didn't mean to barge in and redecorate your floor." I couldn't help but chuckle. "Don't worry about it. The floor needed some excitement." I crouched down, stacking a few folders. Many of them were labeled with familiar legal topics: torts, civil procedure. My eyes narrowed slightly in confusion. "Were you delivering these somewhere?" I asked, handing over a sheaf of papers. The woman gave a quick shake of her head, clearly mortified by her entrance. "Actually, I'm here to see you, Mr. King. And it looks like I've made one heck of a first impression." She offered a hesitant smile. "Let me start over. I'm Nadia Armstrong. Everyone calls me Nia. I'm not looking for your help. I'm here to help you." "Help?" I repeated, rising to my feet with the box now reassembled in my arms. Nia stood up as well, dusting off her knees. She was nearly as tall as me and carried herself with confidence despite the recent spill. I noticed a University of Texas keychain attached to the box. "Yes, sir. I'm a second-year law student at SMU," she explained, mentioning the local law school. "Professor Wilcox mentioned you to me. He said you were a solo practitioner who might be looking for an intern or assistant for the summer. So here I am." She gestured to the box. I brought some references and materials, though they're probably all out of order now." I blinked. Professor Wilcox had been one of my own mentors in law school years ago. I hadn't spoken to him in a while, but I recalled sending him an email back in March, asking if any students might want to intern at a small practice for experience. I never heard back. Presumably no one was interested in an unpaid gig in a tiny office. But perhaps he'd finally passed the word along. My surprise gave way to cautious hope. I hadn't expected any help, but I certainly needed it. Lately, I'd been juggling scheduling, filing, and managing every minor task alone. An intern, even a temporary one, could be a godsend. I smiled at Nia and motioned for her to follow me deeper inside. I do remember asking Professor Wilcox about that, and I could definitely use an extra pair of hands. Let's talk in my office, and we can sort these papers out. Nia beamed, relief evident on her face. "Thank you, Mr. King." She hefted the box again as I led her through the doorway into my inner office. "You can call me Dan," I said kindly. clearing a stack of files off the one extra chair I had. My office was embarrassingly small and cluttered, but Nia didn't seem to mind. She placed the box on my desk and we both sat down. Over the next few minutes, we chatted and organized the spilled papers. Nia explained that she was eager to get practical experience and didn't mind that I couldn't pay much or possibly anything. She had a warm, upbeat energy about her that was infectious. Within minutes, she had pulled out her resume, a bit wrinkled from the fall, and a letter of recommendation from Professor Wilcox. Her resume was modest: a year working in her college's legal clinic, strong grades in her first-year courses, but her enthusiasm filled in any gaps. "I won't pretend I know everything, sir. Dan," Naya said earnestly. "But I learn fast, and I'm willing to do all the little tasks like organizing files, drafting documents, answering phones, whatever you need. I really want to see how a real practice runs, even a small one." She gave an apologetic grin. "No offense," I chuckled. "None taken. It is a small operation here, honestly. Some days I'm not sure it even qualifies as a practice." Nia tilted her head, eyes shining. "It will. We'll make sure it does. I mean, if you take me on." There was something endearing about her confidence, a confidence I realized I'd lost in myself. My initial reluctance faded. "Well, I can't argue with that attitude," I said, extending my hand to shake hers. "Welcome aboard, Nia. I'd be grateful for the help." The bright smile that spread across her face could have lit up the whole strip mall. She shook my hand firmly. "You won't regret it." Thus, Team King Law expanded from one overworked, downtrodden attorney to two. In the weeks that followed, Nia Armstrong became a whirlwind of positive change in my office. Her first day, she declared the filing system a crime against humanity and promptly set about reorganizing decades-old case files that I had barely touched. She set up a color-coded calendar for court dates and deadlines, muttering something about how I'd survived this long without one. I only half-jokingly started calling her Taskmaster, as she cheerfully bullied my office into shape. One afternoon, about a week into her tenure, Melissa stopped by my office to drop off some homemade dinner since she expected to work late again. It was the first time my wife met Nia. I recall it vividly. Melissa, in her sleek black suit, stepping inside the reception area with a Tupperware of casserole, only to pause in surprise seeing someone else there. I jumped up from behind the front desk where Nia and I had been poring over a deposition transcript. "Mel, hey, what brings you here?" I asked, pleasantly surprised. My wife hadn't visited my office in months. Melissa's eyes flickered around, taking in the now tidy space and the young woman standing beside me. "I was on my way to the courthouse and thought I'd swing by," she said smoothly. Her gaze settled on Nia's face, then traveled down to her crisp blouse and modest heels. "And I see you have company." Nia immediately stepped forward, polite and professional. "You must be Mrs. King." "I'm Nia, Dan's intern." She offered her hand with a friendly smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you. Your husband has been showing me the ropes." For a split second, I thought I saw a flash of something in Melissa's eyes. Annoyance? Amusement. But it vanished as quickly as it came. Melissa handed me the container of food while lightly shaking Nia's hand. "Nia, is it? Lovely to meet you. I didn't realize Daniel had taken on an intern." Her tone was cordial enough, but I sensed the subtle edge in it. I felt a flush of defensiveness on Nia's behalf. "Professor Wilcox sent her my way," I interjected, carrying the casserole to my desk. "She's been a tremendous help so far. I can actually see the top of my desk for once." Nia laughed softly. "He's exaggerating. But we have made some progress organizing things." Melissa offered one of her tight, polite smiles, the kind she used at firm cocktail parties with associates she didn't particularly like. "That's wonderful. Every attorney needs a good assistant to keep them on track." She turned her attention fully to me. "Anyway, I can't stay. I have court filings to review this afternoon. I just wanted to drop off dinner since I won't be home until late." I felt the familiar sting of disappointment. Another late night, but I masked it and walked her to the door. "Thanks for thinking of me. Good luck with the filings." Melissa nodded. Then, glancing over my shoulder at Nia, who was studiously pretending not to eavesdrop, she added, "We'll talk later, okay?" "Sure," I agreed. We exchanged a brief, perfunctory kiss on the cheek. Melissa's perfume lingered for a moment after she stepped out to the parking lot. Then she was gone. I stood there watching her drive off, an uneasy feeling in my chest. When I turned back inside, I found Nia tidying up our papers with an inscrutable expression. "How long have you been married?" she asked after a moment, trying for a neutral tone. "7 years next month," I said. "We've known each other since college." Nia nodded slowly, not meeting my eyes, as she aligned a stack of folders. "She's very beautiful, and she clearly cares about you to bring you dinner." I huffed a small breath, returning to our work table. "Yeah, she's something else." I didn't elaborate. I didn't know how to explain to someone who just met us that what Melissa and I had just displayed was a hollow shell of our past warmth. To my surprise, Nia gave me a sly, sideways look. "Well, boss, you better watch out," she teased gently. "If she sees how much we're getting done here, she might start worrying I'll whip her into shape next." The joke caught me off guard and I laughed. A genuine laugh that felt good. "If you can get my wife to work any less or relax, you'll have done a miracle," I joked back. "But I appreciate the vote of confidence." Nia grinned, apparently satisfied to see my gloom lift. "Just saying, not everyone would be thrilled to see their spouse spend all day with some new young assistant. Good thing we're all business, right?" She winked, making it clear she was kidding. "Right," I agreed with a chuckle. "All business." It was innocent banter, but I wondered later if Melissa had indeed been a touch jealous. She hadn't expressed any such sentiment at home and frictoids. In fact, she barely mentioned Nia afterward. If anything, she seemed to find my little intern experiment amusing. One night, when I proudly recounted how Nia had helped draft an excellent brief, Melissa responded with a distracted, "That's nice, dear," before promptly changing the subject to her own office politics. By the end of May, our already infrequent date nights had dwindled to none. Melissa spent more evenings at work or claimed exhaustion. On weekends, she often went to yoga class or out with colleagues, seldom inviting me along. Each time I tried to plan something, she was just so busy, maybe next week. I was growing both worried and frustrated. Our conversations at home became surface level. A rundown of our days, an exchange of schedules, a peck on the cheek goodnight. Something was deeply wrong, but whenever I asked if she was okay, Melissa insisted she was just tired or stressed from the upcoming partner announcement. I wanted to believe her. I told myself that this was a rough patch, our first major one, and that once her promotion came through and my practice, hopefully, picked up, we would reconnect. We had always been a team. Surely we could be again. Yet a nagging voice in my head warned that something else was going on. Little signs gnawed at me. Melissa guarded her phone more than before. She'd tilt the screen away when texting in the evenings. She had new clothes. Not unusual for a rising lawyer, but some pieces seemed different. Sleeker dresses, lacy lingerie in the laundry that I couldn't recall seeing her wear for me. When I casually inquired about a particularly nice cocktail dress I found still in its shopping bag, she said it was for client dinners. Perhaps the most painful sign was her lack of irritation with me. Odd as that sounds, Melissa had always been fiery. If I screwed up or we argued, she'd passionately engage. Now, on the few occasions I'd tried to address our relationship problems, she responded with chilly politeness or detached reassurances. She didn't even get mad when I forgot to pay the internet bill and it got temporarily cut off. She just paid it herself and said, "No worries." That scared me more than a screaming match would have. It felt like she'd stopped caring enough to fight. In hindsight, denial is a powerful thing. I saw these red flags and still I managed to explain them away. She's stressed. She's focusing on work. It's not another man. Melissa would never do that to me. So I thought, one sweltering afternoon in mid-June, as I returned home from court, I noticed Melissa's laptop open on our kitchen table. She was at work and I had stopped by the house to grab a forgotten file. The laptop screen was on, displaying her calendar for the week. Likely she had been checking it during breakfast. I glanced inadvertently and noticed an entry for the previous day. Client meeting, Hotel Lux, 7:00 p.m. I frowned. Melissa hadn't mentioned a client meeting last night. In fact, she had told me she was working late at the office. Hotel Lux was one of Dallas's upscale hotels downtown. Clients sometimes met for dinners there, sure, but Usually, if it was a firm event or negotiation, why wouldn't she have told me? I closed the laptop quickly, guilt twisting in my stomach for snooping even that much. Yet the doubt lingered. That evening, when she came home, around 9 p.m., cheerful but tired, I casually asked how her day went and if she had any interesting meetings. She responded with vague details about a contract negotiation. When I specifically asked if she'd been at Hotel Lux, her eyes flicked toward me sharply for just an instant before she laughed. "Oh, we did have a quick off-site meeting over dinner there, yes. It was last minute," she said smoothly. The client picked the place, nothing too exciting, just boring legalese over fancy steaks. She kissed my cheek. "I'm exhausted, honey. Rain check on talking? I need to crash." I let it go, but a cold sensation settled in my gut. Something about her answer felt rehearsed. July rolled in, bringing stifling heat and, in our home, a deepening chill. By now, Melissa and I were like polite roommates. She was immersed in her world, and I in mine. But I refused to give up on us. I convinced myself our marriage could still be saved if I just found the right moment to break through to her. Perhaps after her partnership announcement, she'd be less stressed and I could plan a weekend getaway to reconnect. That hopeful plan unraveled one fateful night at the end of July. I had stayed late at the office to finish some paperwork on a minor lawsuit I'd settled. Nia had already left for the day, and it was nearing 9 p.m. when I decided to surprise Melissa by picking up her favorite Thai takeout. She hadn't come home for dinner, texting that she was again working late. I figured a little gesture might cheer her up and maybe coax her into actually talking to me for once. With a bag of takeout in hand, I stepped into the towering downtown skyscraper that housed Foster, Burns & Ward, her law firm. I had been there only a couple of times before, and the lobby security recognized her last name and let me up after I signed in. The elevator ride felt oddly nerve-wracking. I realized I hadn't visited her office in over a year. She'd always said it was dull and nothing special to see. When I reached the 24th floor, the halls were mostly dark. Just the faint glow of overnight desk lamps and exit signs guided me. It was clearly after hours. I doubted many people were still around. I quietly navigated the corridors until I saw light coming from a corner conference room near Melissa's office. As I approached, voices came into earshot, a man's low murmur and a woman's soft laugh. I recognized the laugh at once. It was Melissa. Heart pounding, I slowed my steps and moved closer. The conference room's glass wall was partially obscured by blinds, but they weren't fully shut. Through a gap, I could see inside. Melissa was there, all right, perched on the edge of a long table with her legs crossed. And she wasn't alone. A tall, distinguished-looking man in a gray suit stood very close to her, one hand braced on the table near her thigh. Garrett Ward. It had to be him. I had seen his photo in firm newsletters and heard enough about the great Garrett from Melissa over the years to know it was he. Salt and pepper hair, chiseled features, the commanding presence of someone used to being in charge. They were talking in hushed tones, smiling at each other like sharing a private joke. Even as my stomach dropped, I prayed I was misreading the situation. Maybe it was an innocent meeting. Maybe. Then I saw Garrett run a hand gently along Melissa's cheek, tucking a strand of her blonde hair behind her ear in an achingly intimate gesture. She tilted her face up toward him, her eyes shining in a way I realized I hadn't seen in a very long time, at least not directed at me. The bag of Thai food nearly slipped from my fingers. My heart was thundering in my chest so loudly I was sure they'd hear it. I forced myself to back away before I saw anything more. "Don't cause a scene, don't cause a scene," I chanted internally. This was her workplace, and as much as I wanted to burst in there and demand answers, something told me not to. If I confronted them here in that moment, I'd likely only get lies or anger. They'd close ranks against the intruder. Me? Trembling, I retreated down the hall and ducked into the stairwell, adrenaline coursing. My mind was a storm. It's true. The thing I'd feared, the betrayal I'd been trying so hard to deny, it was real. My wife was having an affair with her boss, just as my darkest suspicions had whispered. And not just any affair, but one clearly wrapped up in her career aspirations too. I sank onto a step in the empty stairwell, struggling to catch my breath. The takeout bag dangled from my hand, forgotten. In one horrifying instant, I imagined barging back into that conference room and hurling the food at them, screaming every ounce of hurt out of my lungs. But I didn't. A cooler instinct crept in and took hold. An instinct for self-preservation, perhaps. I needed to think. I needed to not let raw emotion drive me into doing something I'd regret. If Melissa was indeed betraying me so callously, I couldn't tip my hand yet. I needed to understand the full picture. How long this had been going on, what she intended, and what I stood to lose. Because clearly she had been meticulous in hiding it until now. With a shaking hand, I pulled out my phone. I scrolled to Nia's number. She had become not just an assistant but a friend over these months. And right now, in my shock and anger, I needed a level head beside me. I texted, "Are you still awake? I need someone to talk to. Urgent." To her credit, Nia responded within a minute. "I'm up. Everything okay?" I replied, "No. I found out Melissa is cheating. I saw her with someone. I need advice." There was no response for a moment, then, "I'm so sorry, Dan. Where are you? I can meet you." We arranged to meet at my office since it was private and closer to downtown. I didn't trust myself to go home and face Melissa yet, not without a plan. Before leaving the stairwell, I peeked back down the hall toward the conference room. The lights were still on, but I couldn't see them from this angle. Fine. Let them enjoy their little moment. It would likely be one of their last if I had any say. I forced myself to walk calmly out of the building, head down, and threw the now cold takeout into a trash can on the street. The drive back to my office was a blur. Fury, hurt, and a strange sense of clarity all warred within me. By the time I parked outside King Law, my hands had steadied and my jaw was set. Nia arrived moments later. She must have rushed out the door in a hurry. She was in casual shorts and an oversized t-shirt, clearly having been relaxing at home. Concern etched her face as she jogged over to me. We entered the dim office, and as soon as the door closed behind us, the floodgates opened. I blurted out everything, finding them, the touches I saw, the months of suspicion leading up to it. Saying it aloud made it more real and more devastating. I realized my cheeks were wet with hot, angry tears, and I turned away, ashamed of breaking down. Nia's voice was soft but firm as she guided me to sit. She didn't push tissues or platitudes. She just listened quietly until my torrent of words subsided. At some point, she gently placed a hand on my shoulder in solidarity. "I'm so sorry this happened to you," she said finally, her own eyes shiny with empathy. "You didn't deserve it." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Thank you, I just can't believe it even though I saw it. How could she do this after everything?" My voice shook with a mix of heartbreak and anger. Nia sighed. "I had a feeling something was off between you two, but I never wanted this to be the reason." I looked up sharply. "What do you mean? Did you notice something?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Just the way she talked about you that day I met her." "I don't know, Dan. I got this vibe that she didn't respect you or your work. It bothered me. I wanted to say something, but it wasn't my place." I bit back a bitter laugh. "No, you read that right. She hasn't respected me for a long time, I guess." I ran a hand through my hair. I just never imagined she'd throw away our marriage for him. Saying it, I realized I needed to fill Nia in on who him was. I described Garrett Ward and Melissa's likely motivations, the partnership, the money, the plans they had. I even told her about the conversation I had seen on her laptop calendar and how Melissa lied about it afterward. Nia listened intently, her brows knitting together. When I finished, she looked pensive. "So she's carefully planning her exit strategy," she murmured. "It's not just a fling. She has a whole future mapped out with this man." I nodded miserably. "Sounds like it. She must have been thinking about leaving me for months." "But something's holding her back," Nia pointed out. "If she really felt you were dead weight, she could have asked for a divorce already. Why keep up the charade?" I exhaled slowly. Money, pride, maybe fear of causing a scandal before she makes partner. And apparently, according to her conversation with her friend, which I only learned about now, she's worried about having to pay me alimony or split assets. She knows I gave up a better-paying career for that failed startup, and now she out-earns me. If she divorces me as the adulterer, she could lose a lot in the settlement. Nia gave a small smile. "Remind me never to get on your bad side. That sounds perfect. Once you have that, Hit him fast with divorce papers, paint him into a corner. And if he tries to fight, we'll threaten to expose his affair or whatever story you cook up. He'll give in. I felt like I'd been punched. She was willing to completely fabricate lies to ruin me. Garrett chuckled darkly. Remind me never to get on your bad side. That sounds perfect. Once you have that, hit him fast with divorce papers, paint him into a corner. And if he tries to fight, we'll threaten to expose his affair or whatever story you cook up. He'll give in. My blood boiled. They thought they had me. That soon they'd be rid of me with lies while they moved on unscathed. I steadied my phone to ensure this conversation was recorded clearly. It was dynamite evidence of their collusion and intention to defraud. My lawyer brain knew exactly how a judge would react to that. Very favorably for me. After that, they got up to shower together. I spared myself watching that. They must have been planning to head to the hotel for the remainder of the night, perhaps a more luxurious setting for round two. That was good. It meant we'd catch more on the hotel recordings. By 9 p.m., they left the house. I let them go and didn't attempt to confront there. Instead, I retrieved the home camera to secure that footage and then followed at a safe distance as they drove downtown. They valet parked at Hotel Lux and walked in arm in arm, Melissa wearing a trench coat and heels now, looking like a woman on a romantic getaway. It took all my willpower not to stride up and sock Garrett in his arrogant face right there in the lobby. But I held back, remembering the bigger picture. Instead, I waited in my car around the corner and remotely accessed the devices Nia had planted in their suite. Soon, the video feed, grainy but enough, and the audio came through on my laptop. In the suite, I saw them enter to find the lights dimmed, some wine set out courtesy of hotel staff. They laughed, poured glasses, and settled on the couch in each other's arms. That's when their conversation resumed and truly sealed their fates. Over the next hour, between kisses and toasts, they spoke freely, not realizing their entire dialogue was being recorded. Garrett mentioned how he'd convinced the firm's senior partner, Mr. Foster, that Melissa's husband was unstable as a precaution, so that if drama arose during the divorce, they'd be predisposed to side with Melissa. He bragged that old Foster was easy to manipulate over a few scotches at the club. Melissa revealed that she had covertly moved some community funds into an account under her sister's name to prevent me from claiming half. Just a little nest egg, in case the idiot tries to bleed me dry out of spite, she said. Another flagrant admission of fraud. They joked about my small practice. Garrett sneered that maybe he'd throw me some legal scraps after this was done out of pity. Melissa replied that I'd probably leave Dallas with my tail between my legs. Then, chillingly, they discussed timing. Melissa felt confident she'd have her falsified evidence by next week, and she'd present me with a divorce settlement that basically gave me minimal assets and waived any claim to her future earnings. He'll sign if he thinks I can prove he cheated or something scandalous. He's proud. He won't want it aired out, she said. Garrett added, and if he doesn't sign, we'll unleash hell. Between my contacts and your cunning, we can ruin his reputation. He'll be disbarred or bankrupt or both. But honestly, Mel, I doubt he has the backbone. He'll crumble. At this, Melissa paused and asked quietly, do you think I'm doing the right thing? I mean, there was a time I loved him. He's not a bad person. Just not right for me now. It was the first time I'd heard real uncertainty in her voice. Garrett responded by pulling her close. You're doing what you have to. Don't get sentimental. He hasn't been your equal for years. With me, you will have everything you've ever wanted. He's had plenty of time to catch up and he failed, so don't feel guilty for moving on. She nodded, sighing. You're right. I just want it over. And I want us together openly. He promised her that by Christmas they'd be married and she'd be expecting his child, to which she giggled that they'd better slow down on the wine then. I sat there listening, feeling strangely calm. The shock had worn off. Now I was just compiling evidence. Every word they spoke was another nail in the coffin of any case they might try to make against me, and more leverage for me in proceedings. By the time they inevitably moved to the bedroom and the sounds turned amorous again, I had heard enough. I had them. Everything. My hands trembled not with sorrow, but with anticipation of what I'd do next. Nia was on standby at her apartment awaiting my update. I texted her simply, got it, all of it. Meet at the office early AM. She replied with a string of thumbs up and strong arm emojis, knowing it meant success. I considered confronting the two lovebirds right then in the hotel. Storming in with security to catch them naked would be dramatic, but I decided against it. The evidence was secure. An in-person confrontation might just give them a chance to react unpredictably or even destroy some evidence. Plus, I admittedly didn't trust myself not to commit actual battery if I faced them now. Instead, I left the hotel quietly and went to stay at Marcus's empty apartment for the night, pouring myself a stiff drink that barely tempered the whirlwind inside me. I barely slept, running through everything in my mind, formulating the plan for the next steps. The next morning, Saturday, I met Nia at my office at 7 a.m. Her eyes were alight with curiosity and concern. I pulled her into a quick hug, a wordless thank you for her unwavering support. And then we got to work reviewing the trove of recorded material. Her jaw dropped more than once as we played back the incriminating conversations. "This is unbelievable," she whispered. They hung themselves with their own words. "They did," I agreed grimly. "No matter how good of lawyers they are, they can't talk their way out of this evidence. We have adultery, conspiracy to defraud, unethical conduct, you name it." Nia looked up at me, measuring. "Dan, what do you want to do with this? We have enough to bury them in a legal sense. But how far are you willing to go?" I didn't hesitate. All the way. They wanted to ruin me. They were ready to lie, cheat, steal, whatever it took. I won't do anything illegal, but I'll use every legal tool and leverage point to make them face consequences. She nodded, a proud glint in her eyes. "All right, so first move is definitely divorce, but on your terms. File a petition citing adultery and extreme misconduct. With this evidence, she'll have no defense. Right. And I'll aim for an aggressive settlement. I want a generous share of assets plus perhaps damages if I can swing it, given the fraud attempt." Nia grinned. "Don't forget spousal support. She basically destroyed your earning potential by derailing you and then undercutting you publicly. You might have a case for temporary spousal maintenance, especially if the evidence shows she hid assets." It was true. Normally, I wouldn't want a dime beyond fairness, but after hearing how she spoke of me and planned to leave me penniless, I felt no qualms draining her bank account within lawful bounds. We mapped out the strategy. Through one of my few trusted colleagues, I got the ball rolling on the divorce petition immediately, ensuring it would hit the court on Monday morning. We also drafted a temporary restraining order to freeze any joint assets so she couldn't move more money around once served. The next aspect was the professional consequences. Garrett had implicated himself and possibly the firm in unethical behavior. We had him on tape admitting to manipulating a partner and covering up misconduct. That might interest the state bar, or at least scare the firm's leadership into action. I remembered old Mr. Foster. He valued the firm's reputation above all. If he learned his heir apparent and rising star associate, Melissa, conspired to blackmail and defraud, he'd go nuclear to distance the firm. So we prepared a nice package, copies of the relevant recordings and transcripts, along with a polite cover letter from me expressing regret that this matter was so entwined with the firm's members, but that I felt he should be aware for the sake of integrity. I decided to have that delivered to Foster the same day Melissa would be served. As for Garrett's wife, whom he called sanctimonious, her name was Diane, I recalled, I felt she deserved to know as well. A separate package with some choice photos and transcripts was prepared for her, with an anonymous note. She could do what she wanted with that, but I suspected it would lead to her own divorce proceedings against him. That was just collateral damage from his actions. Additionally, we compiled evidence for the state bar complaint I intended to file against both of them for suborning false evidence and breaching ethical duties. It was unlikely to get them disbarred. Bar committees often slap wrists for first offenses, but it would definitely scare them and put a mark on their records. By Sunday, everything was in place. Melissa returned home Saturday afternoon to an empty house. I didn't go back. She texted me asking how my San Antonio meeting went. I replied curtly that it was fine and I'd be staying at Marcus's place for the night as I had a lot on my mind. She responded with a simple, "Okay." Maybe she was too preoccupied with Afterglow to worry about my odd behavior. I did not respond to any further messages from her. That night, I steeled myself for what was to come. Monday morning arrived, crisp and clear. I donned my best suit, the one I hadn't worn in ages, and met the process server outside my house at 7 a.m. I wanted to see the look on her face, probably not wise emotionally, but I needed that catharsis. Right on schedule, Melissa stepped out the front door, power-dressed in a charcoal skirt suit, likely heading to the office, blissfully unaware. I stood across the street, partially behind a tree, heart pounding. The process server, a stout, no-nonsense woman, approached her. "Melissa King, you've been served," she said, thrusting the envelope into Melissa's hands. I couldn't hear from my vantage, but I saw Melissa's confused frown as she took the envelope and opened it. Her posture stiffened visibly as she read the first lines. I imagined she saw the words "petition for divorce and adultery" and realized what was happening. She frantically flipped through the papers, perhaps reaching the list of attached exhibits. We had included a few damning still photos from the videos as a preview. She staggered a half step, and I thought she might fall over. Then her head snapped up and she scanned the street. I stepped out from behind the tree and met her eyes across the way. The shock and panic on her face were evident even from a distance. Her lips moved. I could guess she said my name, maybe a stunned "Daniel?" I gave a faint wave, then turned on my heel and walked to my car. My parting image of her was standing frozen on the sidewalk, divorce papers clutched in shaking hands. I met Nia at the courthouse cafe shortly after. She reported that by now Mr. Foster would have received the special delivery I arranged, couriered directly to his home at 6 a.m., marked urgent. The bar complaint was filed electronically. Garrett's wife's package was dropped in her mailbox. The dominoes were set. What followed was a whirlwind that I sometimes recall like a dream, or a movie climax. By midday Monday, my phone blew up with calls and texts from Melissa. I didn't answer. She left voicemails ranging from tearful begging to outraged demands to talk immediately. I ignored them all. She even showed up at my office around lunch, but the door was locked and I wasn't there. I was meeting with the lawyer friend who'd handled the court appearance. She pounded on the door and shouted for me, but got no response. I watched it through the security camera feed on my phone, feeling oddly at peace as she eventually left, defeated. From gossip channels, I learned some of what went down at Foster, Burns, and Ward. Apparently, old Foster called an emergency meeting with the senior partners and summoned Garrett and Melissa. Words like investigation, moral turpitude, and violations of firm policy were thrown around. By the end of the day, Garrett was placed on indefinite leave and removed from all client matters, pending internal review, a precursor to a quiet firing, no doubt. Melissa was not fired since her partnership was pending. They likely just halted that indefinitely. But she was told to take a leave of absence as well. Their affair, once secret, was now the talk of the firm. An HR rep even called me to ask if I'd be willing to provide any evidence or testimony for their review. I simply directed them to my attorney. Let the legal system give them what they need. Garrett's wife, Diane, as expected, did not take kindly to learning her husband had a mistress and a whole new future planned. I later heard she kicked him out that very night and her high-powered divorce lawyer was serving him within days. Prenup or not, he was in for a fight there, too. As for the divorce between Melissa and me, she never saw it coming so quickly. The evidence was so overwhelming that her fancy hired attorney, not Garrett, obviously, she had to get someone else, advised her to settle almost immediately. There was no point dragging it out to a trial that she would surely lose, humiliatingly so. Within a month, we negotiated a settlement. I would receive 70% of our joint assets, which was fair, I argued, since who knew what else she hid and I had sacrificed career prospects for her moves. Plus, she'd reimburse me for all my attorney fees. We agreed no spousal support was needed because, frankly, with that chunk of assets and my renewed motivation, I'd be fine on my own. I insisted on one unusual clause, a written apology from her, acknowledging her wrongdoing. She balked, said it was humiliating, but I held firm. I wanted it for my closure, I guess. In the end, a short letter was included where she stated regret for her actions and any harm caused to me. It wasn't as heartfelt as one would hope, but seeing her signature under the words was enough. The day the divorce was finalized, about 3 months after D-Day, as I call the day she was served, I felt an immense weight lift off my shoulders. We signed the papers in separate rooms at the mediator's office. I didn't even lay eyes on her. I think we both preferred it that way. In the aftermath, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Melissa had effectively self-destructed her own aspirations. With the divorce scandal and her affair becoming semi-public, whispers spread in our social circles and hers. Her golden reputation was tarnished. Foster's firm quietly pushed her out. She ended up moving to a smaller practice in a different city where not many knew her, starting over, far from the spotlight she once craved. Garrett's downfall was even more poetic. He lost his shot at becoming head of the firm and was forced to resign to avoid a messy firing, especially after the State Bar opened an investigation based on my complaint, which they did. And while it's ongoing, he's likely going to get sanctioned. His wife cleaned out a good chunk of his personal wealth in her divorce. Last I heard, he was trying to start a solo practice of his own. Ironically, likely renting some small office, much like I once did. How the tables turn. And what about me? Well, that's the best part. Through this trial by fire, I rediscovered my drive. Armed with the settlement funds and a clearer head, I reinvented my practice. I moved out of the strip mall and into a modest but professional office downtown. I started networking again, rebuilding relationships that I'd neglected. Clients, impressed by how I handled my own complex case, began to seek me out for their tough situations. But beyond career, I found something even more valuable: personal peace and new love, as the fortune cookie might say. Throughout the ordeal, one person never wavered from my side: Nia. She had gone above and beyond just being an intern. She had become my confidant, my strategist, my friend. In the months after the dust settled, our friendship naturally blossomed into something more. I'll never forget the evening I finally expressed how I felt. It was about 6 months after the divorce. Nia had finished her final exams and I took her out to celebrate at a nice restaurant. Walking her to her door afterward, I stumbled through an awkward speech thanking her for everything and admitted that somewhere in the chaos, I had developed feelings for her that surpassed mentor or friend. To my joy and relief, she broke into that radiant smile of hers and said, "It's about time, Squire," before pulling me down into the sweetest kiss of my life. Yes, she still calls me Squire teasingly. Apparently, when I was absent one day, she discovered some old certificates in my desk referring to me as Esquire and thought it was hilarious. The nickname stuck, and I don't mind at all. Now, a year and a half later, I'm a changed man from the one who started this story. I wake up each morning beside Nia, the woman who helped me reclaim myself, in a city loft that I could only dream of before. My law practice is thriving, ironically, handling quite a few divorce cases. Turns out, my ordeal gave me a unique empathy and insight that clients appreciate. And yes, Chandra, the friend who had lunch with Melissa, did reach out to apologize for keeping secrets. I forgave her. She'd been put in a tough spot. In fact, she referred a significant client to me afterward, perhaps as atonement. On clear evenings, Naya and I often take a walk by White Rock Lake, watching the sunset glitter on the water. It's not an ocean, but it's our peaceful spot. Sometimes the golden hues on the horizon remind me of that first night on the beach when I contemplated the journey ahead. What a journey it's been indeed. Standing here now, hand in hand with someone who truly values me, I wouldn't change a thing. The betrayal, the revenge, it all led me here to a life that is honest and full of hope. I found justice, yes. But more importantly, I found freedom, freedom from deceit, and freedom to be myself again. As we pause by the water's edge, I catch our reflection in the lake. I see a man who was broken but put himself back together stronger, and beside him, a woman who was instrumental in that rebirth, with a heart full of kindness and fierce loyalty. Nia leans her head on my shoulder. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asks softly. I smile, wrapping an arm around her waist. "I was just thinking about how far I've come, how far we've come." She nods, understanding in her eyes. "Do you ever regret not taking her back? I mean, if she had genuinely begged?" I shake my head firmly. No, that chapter needed to end. I had to close the door completely to open a better one. I kiss Nia's forehead. "This is my better chapter." She grins and then nudges me playfully. "Well, Mr. King, are you ready to head home? I believe we have a celebration dinner to cook." "Oh, right. Tonight we plan to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of my divorce being finalized. Not out of spite, but as a toast to new beginnings." "Race you to the car?" I tease. You're on, she laughs, kicking off her sandals to sprint. Our laughter echoes across the tranquil lake as we run, two souls unburdened, chasing the dusky horizon and whatever tomorrow brings. In the end, trust once shattered can sometimes lead to unexpected new horizons. I learned that the hard way, but I'm grateful I did. My life in Dallas might not have followed the path I once expected, but standing here now, I can wholeheartedly say it's a path that led me to exactly where I'm meant to be. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.